if you would have told me that I could run a 7-figure business from my iPad just a few years ago, I would have said you're probably crazy, right? Because I mean, you're probably the same as I am. Like, you probably have an iPad or some kind of device in the house, and for a long time I've always used it to, as a consumption machine to either read the news or things like that, right? And I noticed that recently, especially since I got the latest iPad that I got in my hands right here, I've been using my iPad a lot to actually run my business. And what I figured to do is to share with you the exact apps that I'm using, so you have a bit of an idea of like how that actually works and what I'm actually using it for. Because I'm not just using it as a consumption machine. I use this more and more as a focus machine, where I actually do actual work that I used to do on my desktop, right? So before we go into the actual apps I use, I wanted to share with you what has been the biggest game changer of using the iPad. And just so you know, I don't care if it's the iPad or any other tablet, but as long as it's like a tablet, for me, this is a different device. It just, it fits into your hand. You can take it anywhere with you, and it has super long battery life. And especially with the latest one, for those who are watching the latest Pro, I think I have, it's really, really fast, and that helps as well. So biggest game changer for me has been the actual pen, right? So I for years, I've always been taking notes in like an old-fashioned notebook. I always loved that. But as of, I think, 2 years or so, I've been taking all my notes on my iPad, even the previous one, but I'll share exactly which app I'm using for that, which one I recommend and why that is. But what has also been a game changer for me is like one of those keyboards that you can attach to it. And I like it that it's just magnetic, so you can just, oftentimes I'm just having it like this when I'm reading or when I'm doing writing, as I just showed you, but then I can easily switch and just put it on, and I can start typing and just, communicate that with the team, for example, right? So those are the two gadgets, or the two things that go along with the iPad that I highly recommend to use. And as for the actual apps, let's dive into that. I would say the app I probably use the most, I would say, is maybe Slack, right? Like Slack is like, in case you're not familiar, it's probably the most well-known tool to communicate with your team, like have chat with your team. And it's just great to just catch up. And like here you can, for example, see this is our Yes channel, where we share all of our wins when any of our viral customers get certain results, or like when they share a cool testimonial where we share with each other like how we're actually doing. So first app is Slack, to keep in touch with the team and everything like that. And secondly, probably my favorite app, or not even probably, my favorite app on the iPad is what's called GoodNotes. This is what I use for note writing. So it's really literally like, it just mimics paper, where I just, this is where I brainstorm, where I can just go offline. And what I actually do is like, I like to go into a different environment if I do brainstorming time. I think as an entrepreneur, one of the most important, most valuable times we can spend is not production mode, but it's actually thinking time, making sure that you ask yourself the right questions, making sure that you think 3 steps ahead. And I do that best when I'm completely offline, and also in a different environment. So like once a week, I spend usually half a day in like a bar or a restaurant or a coffee shop, where I keep my phone away, I don't activate Wi-Fi, and I'm just in here writing notes. And for me, everyone's different obviously, but for me, it's just a different flow when I'm actually writing things the old-fashioned way versus for example, typing it out. It's just a different kind of thing, right? And also I use this a lot to actually explain certain things to my team. When I'm on a call, I would just open up GoodNotes and I would just like explain them, and I would just write it out, like this is how it would actually look like this. I'm a visual kind of person, so that's why I like it as well. Plus, thirdly, every morning, or at least most mornings, I write down my daily gratitude as well, right? So I would write down the actual date, for example, 30th of August, already in September, actually 21, and I write down like what I'm grateful for, etc. Right? I do that in the morning to kickstart the day in a really good way. And the third app I use a lot on my iPad to run my business is one that you're actually already familiar with, which is Zoom, right? Obviously, Zoom is perfect for video conference. I use that a lot with our team to dive a bit deeper. Like Slack is for initial quick catch up, but then if we want to go deeper or we need to actually discuss some things, we use Zoom. And what I really like about Zoom is that with the new iPad, it actually follows you around. I'm not sure, like this is a bit of a geeky, nerdy kind of thing, but like it just, even if your iPad is like on a certain position, if I were to move, the camera sort of like moves around with it. I know if you're listening on this on iTunes or Spotify, you can't really see this, but yes, I'm a geek and that nerds me out. So mainly when I use my iPad for conference, I actually tend to do that outside. So let me just actually show you while we're recording this. So this right here is my favorite sort of like calling spot. So this is where I usually sit in the mornings if I have calls with my team, because this is like, what's a better view than outside, right? I'm still dry in case it rains, but I'm sitting outside, viewing the garden, because obviously I work a lot from home. And yeah, that just gives me, like outside gives me the energy while still being able to do my work again on my iPad. And I wouldn't be able to do that on my desktop because it's fixed on a certain location. And the iPad, I can just go here, relax, and yeah, have a call. And then if there's one tool that I would say keeps my mind organized, keeps my weeks and my schedule organized, it's Workflowy. Now, if you haven't heard about Workflowy, you need to try this out. This is the simplest yet most rocking app. I just mentioned that GoodNotes is my favorite app on my iPad. Workflowy is my favorite app overall, not just on the iPad, but like I use that on my desktop, on like my mobile, and definitely also on my iPad. And what's Workflowy, in case you're asking? Well, it's actually a tool to create lists, and that's it. Bullet point list, that is it. But it is like, if you haven't used it, it is the best tool to organize your thoughts, to keep things efficient. And like for me personally, I use it a lot for like creating to-do lists, to keeping projects on track. Like if you haven't checked it out, Workflowy, it is the my most used tool overall, period. Like I put everything, all my thoughts in Workflowy. If I make notes during a call, I put it in Workflowy. If I make a schedule for like, what do I do? What do I focus on today? What do I focus on tomorrow? And I always do it in advance, right? I always write down my schedule for the next day in advance, so I know exactly, right, once the day starts, I'll dive right into it, right? So if you've never checked out Workflowy, highly recommend it to organize your thoughts. And like I have also shared this with the rest of my team, so my team is actually using it as well to organize their thoughts. And it, like everyone who I've told it with and shared this with has been absolutely loving it. So highly recommend it. Which brings me to the next app, which I'm actually looking at currently, which is Mindnode. Mindnode is a mind map tool, and I personally use mind maps mostly to create content, right? So for example, here I got a mind map where I have all kinds of thoughts of like, hey, what content could I produce? What can I create? And as you can see right here, I actually wrote down the tools, the very tools that I'm sharing with you in this video or in this episode on Workflowy as well. So first I write it down, and I use this a lot. It synchronizes perfectly with my Mac as well. That's why I went for Mindnode. I know there's plenty of other tools, and I'm sure all those tools are great. This is just the one I started using. I haven't really compared all the others, but this only works on Mac, but it works really well on both on iPad, but it's synchronized immediately to all other devices. And the reason why I like this a lot as well is because, luckily I know, like it's just slick, it's super basic, it doesn't have a lot of options, which I like, right? I like simplicity. And if, in case you have seen any of my, you followed a course that I've ever created in the past, you'll actually notice that I break down all my courses in a mind map as well, right? I put it all in a mind map to make sure it's all connected, and it's easy to see what step 1, what step 2, step 3, step 4, etc., etc. So if you're on a Mac and you want to create mind maps, definitely use Mindnode. I like that one a lot. Which is also, like I said, the tool that I'm currently using as a quick sneak peek of what is the next app. And as you can see, the next one up the list is ClickUp. And this actually used to be Trello. I'm sure you've sometimes heard from Trello, right? Especially if you work with a team like we do, you need to have a project system where you have all your projects in, where everyone knows what they're working on, where all the tasks are in. And for years and years and years, my business ran on Trello, which is super basic, super simple. Like if you were at like 10 people or even up to 15 people in your team, Trello is perfect. But as we started to grow our company, and we were at, I think it was we were at about 35 people at a time, we just noticed that Trello just wasn't cutting it out anymore. Like there was just too many things that we were lacking, and we started investigating, and there's all these different tools out there that focus on this very problem, right? And we went for ClickUp because it's just the most flexible tool while still easy to learn. It's still a bit of a learning curve, not as easy as Trello, but if you manage a team, like I said, with over 20 people, and if you have a more like complex workflow, not Workflowy, then ClickUp is just, it puts it all in one box. It does like documents and all that. So we have all our SOP, standard operating procedures, all in ClickUp. We manage all of our teams. So like the marketing team knows exactly what they're working on a day-by-day, week-by-week basis. We can all do our metrics there and there. We our development teams, they know exactly what they're working on. Like it's all connected, it's all in one app. So I use that on my app, but I have to say, big but, the app, mobile app and the actual iPad app, they don't work as well. I mainly use it to check things out, what a certain status is. I rarely actually dive into the actual app because their app just isn't that great yet, right? So hopefully in the future, I can revisit this and I can say, yes, it's great. But right now, ClickUp works better on desktop. And then a super basic one is obviously Apple's own Notes app. So I actually use their Notes app quite a bit. Again, I like simplicity. There's not a lot of options in the app, and it perfectly synchronizes with all the other devices on my phone and my Mac, etc., etc. So if, for example, I want to write an email, I usually just write it in here first. If I want to write out some other copy, I write it in here first. If I'm on the go, if I were on my desktop, I don't use it as much. But if I'm on the go or my iPad, somewhere on my iPad, I just use this to write copy. And then that's it, like nothing fancy or anything like that, but it works really well. And even though it's not so much needed to run the business, obviously I read a lot. Like I think if you're not reading a lot, you're definitely missing out. Like on a day-by-day basis, usually in the morning I start reading. Again, I do my morning routine with the daily gratitude as well as some reading as well. And I used to read, again, old-fashioned old books. And as of I think like 6 months or so, I started using my Kindle app. As you can see, I just finished reading a book of Go Live, which is a friend of mine, Fred Besta. But I read everything on my Kindle app these days so that I can actually take notes and actually mark things in the actual book while I'm reading, so that afterwards I can just go through all my notes once again. Whereas with the old-fashioned way with the books, I usually make notes as well, but then I have to go through the whole book page by page to see, hey, what did I actually take note on? So what I actually do every once in a while is I actually go through the old books I've been reading and I just read the actual notes. There's just one page where like, hey, this is what I marked, this is what I marked. And that's usually a great reminder because I don't know about you, but like when I read a book, I always think like, oh, that's great, that's perfect, that's a brilliant idea. I need to do something with that. But then later on, I forget, right? I'm not someone who remembers everything. So it's good to sometimes just catch up and go dive back into a book that I've been reading to make sure that I still know what the actual key insights were. And then obviously I use Gmail as well. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time there. So let's move on to the next app and the final app on the list, which I actually use quite a bit as well, which is called Teleprompter. Because I'm not sure about you, but when I record videos for my business, I'm not natural. Like you might think like, oh, but he's doing this so many times. No, oftentimes, especially when I need to record an ad or a special sales video or anything that needs to be really, really good, I script it all out, or someone from my team helps me script it out and then actually read it from my teleprompter, and I put that on my iPad. So actually, let me just dive into the studio and show you how that looks. So here I'm in the studio, although it's a mess right now, as you can see, but what I got right here is a mirror, right in front of the camera. So here's the actual camera that I use, right, which is a Panasonic GH5, if I remember correctly. But then here's a mirror, or actually not a mirror, but it's a window, as you can see, but it mirrors with the iPad in front. So what I'll do, let me just open up the Teleprompter app, which would have the text in mirror view, right? And I put that on. And then I'll need to put the blanket over as well, right, to make sure it actually mirrors well. And then I can just read whatever's up here, right, and starts playing. And I look right in front of the camera while it's actually playing. So that's the Teleprompter app, lifesaver if you are recording videos or anything like that. And that actually summarizes the apps that I use for my business, to run my business on my iPad. I hope it's been helpful. If it has been, or even if it hasn't, please leave a comment or leave a review. I'd really appreciate that. And definitely let me know what app you are using the most. And if you already know those apps. Like from all those things, I think the two favorite ones that I think not everyone knows about is GoodNotes, right? Which is Mac only, I believe, and then Workflowy. Like Workflowy is for everyone and it's free. It's the best tool. So if you're, if nothing else, at least check out Workflowy. Highly recommend it. So that's it for today, and I'll see you soon.